It's a great pleasure and honor to introduce Beatriz Rodríguez-Labajos. She's an ecological economist and a professor at the UPF Public Policy Center of the Pompeu Fabra. She was recently awarded with the prestigious ERC Consolidator Grant named Diverse, which is starting soon. We have been posting new job positions that are being recruited now. Lots of excitement there, and Beatriz has been conducting research on different topics in different organizations and institutions, from ICTA at the Autonomous University of Barcelona to UC Berkeley, as well as visiting professor at the Autonomous University of Mexico State and University of Zacatecas. As an ecological economist, she has been conducting research on intersection between environmental justice conflicts, water management, agro ecosystems, but she also, her works also spans beyond academia, consulting for international organizations, and she had a relevant role in the coordination of one of the most important projects on environmental conflicts, namely the EJOLT project. So without further ado, Beatriz, thank you so much for being with us, and I would like to invite you on the virtual stage.
Thank you, Chantal, and also Paulina for inviting me and organizing, and thank you the audience, and apologies for this technical problem. I understand that you can see now the slides, so I'll proceed. What I'm going to do today is to bring together several outcomes from a long period of research that addressed mining conflicts mostly, but at the same time I was also working on water justice and water management. So this has been an opportunity to bring all these different insights together through the lens of water, and I appreciate that opportunity. Okay, let's see. As has been said, I work at the University of Pompeu Fabra, and today the presentation will be structured in three parts. The first one is basically the presentation of some evidence from these different studies, in which we will see the combination, inextricable combination between water and mining conflicts, to the extent that, I am saying, well, basically we're talking about the same thing very often, or most of the times. Then we'll go to a more theoretical part to see how we have, or we are conceptualizing, at least I have been doing this connection between water, mining conflicts, and environmental justice, and then some pieces on how to reinforce this idea that environmental conflicts in general are drivers of environmental sustainability or environmental improvement from the perspective of the communities, organizations that are defending their lands and their waters. And in case there are some science geeks, I'm using some resources as this one to explain or to introduce the idea of how there is a basic superposition between water and mining conflicts. As an example, years ago, when peasants from the area of you cannot hear me, thank you, and I hope you can hear me better now. I think it's a matter of the speaker. Let me know if it doesn't work. These peasants were marching to defend their lands against a mining, an important and big mining project. They called it their march, not the anti-mining march, but they call it the March for Water and for Life. And within their activities, they formally included set of dialogues about the notion of water justice. This is not unique when we look at the data, and Jean-Paul has mentioned this big collection of conflicts that is now public and you can use to identify and to filter certain characteristics of the conflicts. Well, this big data set that has now more than 4,000 conflicts, I believe. Well, yesterday I checked and it has 767 conflicts on the extraction of mineral ores and construction materials, and this is not everything about mining. There is also more to say about energy minerals, but just as a sample, when we see these, 90% of these conflicts that characterized in this database through their impacts as well are perceived as impacting surface waters through pollution. More than 70% are perceived to affect groundwater through pollution or depletion. There is a concern on mine tail spills, and there's half of them are perceived to have impacts on hydrological and ecological connectivity. And of course, all of these impacts occur at the same time, to the extent that in the more than 20% of the cases, what is presented as a mining conflict is also presented as a conflict. And the conflicts can be categorized in different ways, as a conflict on water access. So, well, when we go to the details of how this happens, we know that a mine uses water, often beyond the capacity of the lands where it is, or in direct competition with the activities that were developed there before the arrival of the mine. It, of course, also produces changes in water quality in a way that the hydrological cycle as a whole, both in terms of surface and groundwaters, is affected, and of course other water uses are affected as well. Looking at 24, this study has some years, probably now the picture will be more comprehensive. The 24 emblematic mining conflicts, we could map with more detail the type of impacts on water that the conflicts, the people reporting on the conflicts detected, and we identified that this affects both naturally dry and water scarce areas and water-rich areas. The impacts are not only physical, if you want, and more recently studying small-scale conflicts over small-scale fishing that, of course, depends, is very much dependent on the quality of water. We identified with some scholars in Colombia that although our intention was not looking at mining, we found mining as one of the types of conflicts when fishing clashes with other activities in the region. A characteristic, a feature of these types of conflicts is that they involve a great deal of violence, and they were one of the few categories where armed conflict was explicitly mentioned and this is a study that was done analyzing films, but also in direct contact with the communities that participated in the preparation of the films. So this is a testimony directly from the communities. We're talking here about the normal operation of a mine, but then we know that there are accidents, and some big ones are well down. In 2015, 2019, there were geographically very closely in close areas, two big two big mine dam collapse, and the results were catastrophic. When I teach this, I sometimes show the videos. I will not show them today. I will prepare or will disseminate this presentation in case it may be useful. I don't show it also because they are quite impactful in a way that when I was watching them yesterday, checking this presentation, so I decided not to show it. It's the visual impact of what it means, the destruction of an area, and the human life is terrible. But this doesn't seem to be an obstacle for these projects or these dams to be proliferating. And it's impossible not to operate a mining project at large scale without this. You may say, well, this is unfortunate. This is probably the result of isolated incidents. Okay, I don't know if you can see. Well, I click now in this link. But I don't know if you can see the.
It's not redirecting us, so we're still on your presentation.
I see. Is it possible that you link it, you click it for me so we can see this website for a second?
Yes, I'll share my screen 1 second.
Thank you.
Yes.
Yes, I don't want to see the video. I want to see the link that is at the bottom of the slide.
Okay, let me try again.
Thank you.
Perhaps if you click on the link yourself, you can share a different window. I think then you can show us exactly the link that you wanted to share.
Okay. Let's leave it there so not to spend more time. Can you bring me back to the presentation?
Yes, perhaps you share the screen yourself, then you can decide when to skip to the next slide. I think it will be a bit more easier for you.
Okay. Okay. Sorry about this.
Don't worry.
Okay, what I wanted to show. Okay. No. What I wanted to show is that there is a database, that the information will be there available for you to see, that it's regularly updating this type of incidents. And the last one that is registered in this database is from February this year. So even if they are not so mediatic, even if we don't see them in the news, they are happening all the time. And this means that we should assume this type of incidents not as isolated events, but as part of the normal operation of a large metabolic process. So closing this idea of mining and water are connected is probably not news for people in the audience. I will just emphasize that mining operations impact either quality of water or both. And this is impact. I mean, it happens. It is not technically very easy to operate a mine without causing these impacts. In most of the cases, water is needed in the process of the operation of a mine. For people who are impacted, water by a mine, water is typically the main claim. In a way that many mining conflicts are actually coal mining conflicts because involve some type of mining commodity, but actually they are conflicts over water and water access. why does the connection operate this way? Well, the way how I see it is that there is a social metabolism that is permanently growing. We, as society, are embedded in an environment, and we make use of materials, we make use of energy in a process that entails first getting access to a resource, then mobilizing it, transforming it, and using it a certain way. And in this process, we use water. If we understand this process, these steps, as the operation of mining activities, first we have to establish property rights on places, and typically we choose them because of okay. Can you please confirm if it is the case?
I can see it. So okay. Yes, okay, yeah, most people can see it.
Then the establishment of mining concession, of course, it pursues the access to the mineral, the ore, and the minerals at hand. But it was also strategically looks for accessing the water that is necessary to mobilize those materials. Otherwise, it's not technically easy to undertake the operation. So water starts circulating into the extraction process, and in there, physically, water is used. But as actual water is used, the amounts of water used for this process get incorporated in the commodity as virtual water. I know Jean-Pierre is an expert in this topic. Other people will call it used water, but the point is amounts of water are necessary to continue the operation of a mining project. And of course, you have to process the materials to transform them in the commodities that then finally will enter the process of transformation. In all this, water is used. Some of this water is lost. Some of this water naturally gets back into the hydrological cycle through evaporation. And some of this water will change in quality in a way that even if the hydrological cycle is there, will be transformed, and often irreversible ways. So a growing social metabolism, the sites where we live, requires more minerals. And this is apparent despite efforts to strengthen the idea of a dematerialized economy. These efforts of increasing efficiency often end up in an increase of the total amount of materials that we use. And then new materials get relevance as there are technological shifts, as the materials that we now need for the twin revolution, the energy and digital revolution. This growing metabolism, as following the scheme I just presented, entails a growing hydric metabolism. And this means that water needs to be transformed in a commodity through modifications. We don't want water as it comes. We have to shape it in a way, in the proper amounts, in the proper quality for the needs of this societal metabolism. And also through the allocation of an unequal, of course, and benefits between actors that want to access this water. And in this clash of cost and benefit allocations, and here cost and benefits is used, but we could talk also about damages and benefits. Conflicts emerge, and they emerge in different stages, we will see, and at different scales. My point with this presentation is that if this happens, people involved in the conflicts will also generate novel governance proposals, some of them successful, to their claims. I was saying that a way to organize conflicts, and this scheme has always helped me to try and understand these different ways how conflicts can appear in different stages of the commodity chain and at different scales. When I look at the cases I studied or new cases, I was trying to see which cases will help me to illustrate these interactions. Well, I found some. Perhaps they will be familiar for some of you. It is clear that water is used at the extraction level and at different stages. And then, for instance, to use a relatively new case, mining, lithium mining operations that are more popular as a subject to study more recently, entail the use of water, often with local impacts. But when we see that the use of water for the operation of the mining sector enters the national level regulation, as it happened in the case of the Chile's water codes, we can say that water and mining operate as a compound at the national level. And then some of you may be familiar with this organization, the International Chamber of Mines and Metals, which is basically a group that within the mining industry tries to defend the interests of the mining industry. Well, a keynote speaker of this Water in Mining Global Summit will come from this organization. And of course, we have to say, if there is attention on this topic, is that really is a relevant one. And checking materials in these last days, I've noticed that the scarcity of water has become actually an important point for the mining industry. But not only the extraction stage is that we will observe conflicts. Minerals need to be transported, and a conflict that is the halfway local, halfway regional, national scale is the one that we observe in the Caribbean Colombia, where the extraction of coal is done inland, but very little, practically nothing of the coal that is extracted in Colombia is consumed in Colombia. 100%, so years ago, probably the situation still remains the same, is exported. How do you export these amounts of coal? Well, it's shipped in ports that are built specifically for taking coal that arrives by train, crossing what they used to be agricultural areas. Then it's shipped and sent to Europe or sent to the US. In this process, often there are accidents and the coal ends up in the sea. And then this impacts the small-scale fishing activities that operate there, and where mostly Afro-Caribbean communities is the main livelihood source. Then at the global level, we could also see big conflict that is surprisingly under-addressed, unless I'm missing something important, which is the virtual water in international trade mineral commodities. I see more or less recent reviews where this topic is addressed for crops. This is common. It's addressed to a certain extent for oil and perhaps coal, but in general, I haven't seen. But tell me if you know one. Global assessment of the virtual water in mineral ores, and I think this is an important topic. The CMV is not so much addressed. But then, from the local to the global scale, the issue of acid mine drainage that specifically affects some localities or some regions, but then also causes transboundary conflicts, and is like a ticking bomb at the global level, is the logical outcome of the need of polluting water beyond what you can often legally bring back to the natural environment. So mining operations, mines typically store it there, but then the mine closes, and usually the tiling dam is there over time abandoned, and of course eventually will collapse. And when we see the situation at the global level, we see an increasing number of these tailing dams collapsing, and this is logically is doomed to happen. Well, there are impacts, but why were we talking, and there are conflicts, but why are we talking about environmental justice? Conflicts. Okay. When the type of impacts we are seeing typically affects to communities that depend on local water sources for their livelihoods, and that rarely benefit from the profits of these mining operations. Therefore, water, the costs of managing and the benefits of accessing that water, and the incomes derived from its use are distributed unequally. And what drives this unequal distribution are power inequalities connected to race, ethnic identities, class, gender, and often regional imbalances. This is what in the 80s was, this is very similar to what in the 80s was called environmental justice by African American communities that detected a similar problem when observing how harmful facilities were located in the United States. Today, the discourse of environmental justice has traveled over space and also thematically to other topics. I would like to emphasize that although typically we made a clear distinction between well, there is an element of race or there is an element of gender when understanding the distribution. I believe we are not using so much these components to understand the diversity in environmental movements, because these are ontological distinctions not only for the sake of defining something, but also for the policy implication it has. So when we talk about communities, we miss the point that within communities there are men, there are women, there are children, there are girls, there are boys, and they all participate in this process in different ways. I had the opportunity to travel to Colombia, and then the privilege to listen young boys saying, look, they are talking about the relocation of a community and nobody asks us. Yeah? So they were trying to use artistic expressions to make this point that they also wanted to participate in the decision of the relocation. A point this idea that distribution is an important point, but not the only one to understand environmental injustices. I think it's well made by Strater and Knox in a more or less recent paper, where they try to understand what makes water and mining conflicts more intense. And this is my graphic interpretations of what they say in a very well written paper. They say, well, you can find reasons to explain intensity in the planning stage and also in the operation stage. And what I read in this is that, well, people react more intensely when they are angry or when they are in total desperation. But among the reasons why they are angry, the authors emphasize this notion of the impacts on cultural and spiritual values attached to water as one of these elements, and the lack of participation, which I think matches well the classical framework of environmental justice as this multidimensional notion that entails distribution, representation, and participation. I think the authors rightly point out to intensity as a topic to observe is something that soon before that we had studied as well, and we identified that when communities react to are involved, engaged in a conflict in the planning stage, and when the intensity of the conflict is higher, the likelihood of this conflict to be qualified as an environmental justice success by the communities is higher. So I think the idea of understanding intensity is a relevant one. We also observed in the same paper that impacts on water quality specifically also explain a higher intensity of mining conflicts. Now, still compiling insights from this process of looking at mining conflicts, we observed that when people were explaining the situations in their conflicts and when they were asked, is this an environmental justice success? And they could say yes, or they could say no, or they could say, I don't know. So, and then we asked why. So when we analyze the why that appeared in the yes and the why that appeared in the no, we observe this way of understanding environmental justice or injustice from the perspective of the people involved in mining conflicts. So when there were the reasons that appear more on the top of these boxes, well, people tended to say yes, this is an environmental justice success. And when there were more frequent reasons that appear more at the bottom of these boxes, people tended to say, no, this is not an environmental justice success. So based on this, we say, okay, well, for people involved in conflicts, reason to explain justice or injustice is, first of all, that the project is operating or not, it's not constructed even, that the impacts are managed properly, because big impacts are going to happen, that there is an institutional response that is favorable to the people involved in the conflicts or affected by the mines. And this, I think, is relevant for this discussion on the role of the state in transformative projects. Well, at least for people engaged in the conflicts that we analyze, the state is still a relevant actor, and perceiving insufficient response from the state is perceived as an injustice by the communities. And then, interestingly, when we're talking, when a conflict affects, not disrupt the community, this is understood as an injustice. And there, in this particular topic, there was a big divide between the conflict as an element that actually helps to improve the community, to work in a more cohesive way, to focus the efforts towards a common objective. Well, this was actually, even if there were impacts, or there was some relatively less favorable outcome in the other dimensions. When the project itself helped to strengthen the community, this was considered a source of environmental justice. But most of the other elements, basically all negative, had the opposite perception. And then, to get to this third part of the presentation, the idea is that conflicts, mining conflicts that are connected to water so closely, as I was arguing, are actually an important source of institutional innovation. Again, looking at the transformative demands that appear in relation to advancing environmental justice in mining conflicts, we could identify these 5 types of demands. Well, important one, stop the project. And you may say, well, how is this transformative? No? Because in many cases, stop the project was basically, well, I don't want this project here, please take out of mine. I don't want, it's affecting my community, it's affecting me, it's damaging me. And there was not an implicit concern about the project going somewhere else. Actually, this happened. But in most cases, what we had is this idea that I don't want this project, but I don't want that you bring this project anywhere else. No, this not in my backyard or not in anybody's yard. No, I don't want this project to happen. No, and by doing this, communities are actually contributing to directly, like tackling the growth of societal metabolism. And I don't think there is a stronger way to transform today's world. But there were also calls for remedial measures, and I think this is very clear to understand, very easy to understand, that if you are suddenly affected in your water supply, you will want something to be done. And if the mine operates, but the water supply somehow is restored, well, that works. Some of these initiatives, also some of these demands, were towards change the profile of local development in a way that mining was not so central in the aspirations of development in the community, because often what happens is that the community is divided in relation to the opportunities that the mine says it will create. Importantly, there were demands directed towards the recognition of rights, and we'll talk about this a bit more now. And then there were the demands of, well, we have to transform it all, no? We have to change it all. And then you can see that there is an interconnection between these type of demands as well. And as I was mentioning, studying conflicts and conflicts over water particularly helps to understand how actually how important they are in moving the way how we observe environmental action. In a paper that has many years now, some of these ways to change water management and water governance, looking at it now from the perspective of how they are connected with mining, I see that most of not most, but many of the networks on water justice and the development of the discourse of rights as a source of power, basically, come from the involvement or the important role that water has in mining conflicts. Sorry, the opposite. They come directly from the impacts of mining in water governance. And then, just as an example of many networks of water justice, I point out here two that are very much involved or were very much involved with mining conflicts. FENSAT, what today is the Secretary of Planning in the environment, the Ministry of the Environment in Colombia, is a very well-known and respected network that has been historically engaged in the defense of rivers, of course, but also in the opposition to mining conflicts. The Tribunal Latinoamericano del Agua, that's not been operating so much in the last years, but was very much involved in raising international attention on the conflict, on the Conga conflict. And in this case, these networks, well, they offer practical support. That's true. They promote coalitions. They developed. They contribute to political development. But we should emphasize that networks are actually a really important way to make the achievements circulate. And in another study we did with the same group that I've mentioned in other slides. We analyzed actually how all these conflicts were connected to each other, either because the organization that participated was the same organization or because the company that was involved was the same company. And then we tried to see if what was the perception of success level. And I will not enter the technicalities, but basically what you see in green tends to be a yes, what you see in red tends to be a no. And what we observed is that actually there are network effects in this connection. So the perception of environmental justice success, to paraphrase Conan 2010, travels in networks. Okay. Then we have, importantly, mining conflicts as with having water as a central claim. And these are many, and these are some of the many instances where you could find this claim to water for life or the right to water as a human right, which is exactly what they understood from very important struggles for the right to water in Bolivia that, let's say, they captured as part of the strategies, but then they bring back as a reinforcement of the declaration or the recognition of water as a human right by the United Nations. But talking about rights, the rights of nature are very much connected to water, as you may know. The first court decision based on the idea of the rights of nature in Ecuador was connected to a river, not directly connected to mining. But then, some years ago, a mining project, the Rio Branco project, was suspended by a court precisely based on the idea of impacts on the rates of nature. And nowadays, we have several rivers around the world as recognized in terms of their legal personhood. One of them concretely with this idea supporting the defense against mining in the Choco region. So just concluding, I guess this is why Paulina's accept is emerging. What I've learned is that in the last few years is that mining conflicts and water are come together. And this is impossible, basically, studying one without looking at the other. But if we understand this notion of water metabolism and societal metabolism, it will be easier then to understand how these conflicts operate at different stages, and I think it's a way to approach the study of conflicts in a systematic and, I would say, enlightening way. Logically, water groups mobilize against the impacts they perceive, and sometimes just in a defensive way, which is normal. Wouldn't we do the same? But at the same time, with their claims, many are actually contributed to transformative change. Some of them are quite radical. Let's say, up to the challenge we have today in terms of water and in general environmental issues. And environmental justice movements engaged in conflicts have formed networks, have proposed new principles, have been acting in the promotion of human rights to water, and have been also the first ones to endorse water as a subject of rights. New things are happening now that come to reconfigure what I said. These studies were done, some of them 5 to 10 years ago, so many things have changed. Some of the ideas I see emerging have to do with what to do with, probably many people have studied this very well, with the decimal small-scale mining, emerging frameworks of environmental justice that happily or fortunately are very much better understood, particularly those coming from Asia. What is going to happen with the minerals required for the energy and digital transition, and this is intersectionality as a way to understand many of these processes in a more sophisticated way. And that's it. I'm sorry, I've passed my time, but I'm very happy to listen to your questions.
Thank you so much, Beatriz. It was incredible to watch your presentation and listen in, and I think you did such a good job really drawing the different linkages between different actors, different sectors, also different forms of contestations and different themes. So I think it really drew a very complete picture, so thank you so much for that. As already mentioned, the floor is very much open for questions the last couple of minutes, so please feel free to post either in the Q&A section or the chat section, and we will spend the last bit of the seminar on answering those. Perhaps in the meantime, I could ask one question to get this process started, if you're okay with that, Beatriz. I was wondering if perhaps you encountered any form of co-production between the different actors. So that could be within the academic field, perhaps papers that came out as authored by both people that mobilized around contested issues like mining and academics, but also perhaps collaborations between the different social movements and policymakers in certain local areas. Is that something that you saw yourself or know of?
Well, the project that Jean-Paul mentioned was actually a collaboration between environmental justice organization and people in academia. But we're talking about relatively higher level organizations. They were networks, or they were well-known organizations, very well connected to processes in the field, but not necessarily engaged in the conflicts. So what I've seen, and of course these were wonderful producers of the knowledge they needed. So there was a process of co-production, but these organizations were already producing very high quality work. What I've seen over the years is that there is a higher, understandably so, reluctance to participate in these processes of knowledge co-production when it's not something initiated by the organizations themselves. And I think this is this comes a bit from stakeholder fatigue, but also probably by through the increasing understanding of the power of knowledge as something that comes from processes in the field. That is what I would say now.
Thank you so much for the answer. I see, Jean-Paul, you have a question. Perhaps I can take one question from the audience first and then pass it on to you. Would that be okay? Okay, great. We have a question that perhaps could be linked to the opening question, which is about specific policy solutions to mitigate such water conflicts. And it is quite a complex question. It's always tough to come up with very specific recommendations, but is there maybe a few pieces of advice that you would share, maybe focusing on the case studies that you've worked on?
Yeah. I understand this question, this question well. I mean, it's often the case that we heard about, resistance and opposition as a source of solutions, but then what does it mean? I see, the thing is, the question is phrased in terms of policy solutions, no? If you ask me, I would say that let's leave now in parentheses the policy part. I would say that the solutions that community find by themselves, when they are left alone, and they manage to bring very specific demands to allies, but they just need to be done the work they need to do. They want to do. They are quite standing. I could observe how a canton in Ecuador had managed to totally transform their own profile, basically because they have been left alone in terms of they could operate. So there was a measure of a canton that is called Nabón. It's near in the area near Cuenca, in this region. And they had this problem of being an area that expelled population through migration. So basically, just women and old people and children remained there. And then in a process that lasted basically decades, they had managed to reformulate their own profile to the extent they could. I mean, transform the landscape into basically all organic production, and they did things that for us, from my perspective, are quite sophisticated, like participatory budgets for the communities, etc. This case is not so well known, I believe, and I was in awe, saying that me, other people that were visiting, and I say, look, this happened because yes, we received some support at the beginning. I think that they received international cooperation support, and they made us understood first our value, and then after that we basically said, okay, now we're going to do what we want to do. Yeah? And this was, let's say, if you want, politically driven exercise, but at the local level. No, I think exercises like this would be possible if then they are not disrupted by higher level decisions. At the time we were visiting that area, basically they were suffering the pressure of mining concessions from the national government. They say, we all just want, please help us to get rid of those concessions or so, to do something. Because look, we live well, we don't need anything. I mean, and we are not talking about the living well that sometimes we idealize. These people have managed to find their own development profile, and that was in a well-connected way. I mean, they basically were supplying produce to the nearby city, etc. So it's not that they were totally disconnected from market or something like this. Not at all. I would say this is, but this is, I don't know to what level this is a policy thing. In general, taking some of these principles to revise policies that actually are impacting may be more helpful than create new policy instruments.
Thank you so much. This was a very exhaustive answer. I think it really touched upon a lot of different aspects. So once again, thank you for that. I'm seeing we're actually already past the time. I'm keeping in mind that Jean-Paul also had a hand raised. I don't know if you would like to follow up on that. Then I would have to ask you to unmute yourself.
Yeah, I also see other questions from the participants, so perhaps let's give priority to them.
Okay, so let's take the last question as the final question of the round. Yeah, okay. So the question is, first of all, there's a thank you to you, Beatriz, for the excellent presentation that I definitely echo. And the question asks, could you comment about whether environmental conflicts are considered in recent processes of legal framework updating and formulation in Latin America? For example, Chilean Water Act reform. Is that a topic that is being discussed at all?
I would say that the reform of the Chilean water code is the outcome of 10 years of conflict. Perhaps I am simplifying here, but the Chilean society has been superhuman level persistent in opposing very powerful set of forces and maintaining this opposition to the water code as in general the way how water was governed. And this is how there was a recent reformulation that somehow at least has into consideration some physical elements when providing water allocations, no, and some reorganization of say priority uses. That said, I am not. I don't think it's perfect. It's not. I would say the result of many years of opposition of the situation that was the prior situation. But I am not aware of a very thorough analysis. Probably there is. I just don't know.
Thank you so much, Beatriz. So yeah, I am once again aware of time. So Jean-Paul, perhaps if the question, no? Okay. Then for the sake of time, following what's already happening in the chat, thank you so much, Beatriz, for your time, for the presentation. I think it was incredible to be able to tune in and listen about your research and the information that you had to share with us. And as per usual, I wanted to share a little reminder to everyone, as next week will be our very last presentation, the very last session of the series, and it will be the lecture also in the theme of water and mining, titled Negotiation Natures, Decision Making on Mining Projects Through a Multidimensional Environmental Justice Lens, by recently defended, therefore, Dr. Mirja Soderer. I also saw that it was one of the papers that you were referencing, Bea, so I love that there was already certain bridges between the two sessions. So we kindly invite you all to the final session. Once again, thank you, Beatriz. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today, and enjoy the rest of the day. Take care.